What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports here on our SEC channel at the Voice of College Football, giving you my Week 6 power rankings in the SEC. What a weekend it was. Coming into this past weekend, we were expecting just a ton of great games. Now, Alabama and Georgia, obviously, they got blowout wins. So those games were a little bit disappointing. Thought that they might both be a little bit more competitive, especially Alabama, Ole Miss. But we still had a great game with Auburn LSU. We had a big upset. Kentucky beating Florida. Texas A&M losing to Mississippi State. That was another great game. So it was maybe not quite as big of a weekend as we thought it was going to be, but still saw some great games and really solidified what we already knew with Alabama and Georgia being the best two teams in the SEC. Let's get to the power rankings here at the bottom. You see Vanderbilt at number 14. Hey, they got a win. It was UConn, but it was a win. So they are 2-3, but they're still the worst team in the SEC. I think that's pretty clear. A battle here between South Carolina and Missouri for the number 12 spot. I'm going to go with South Carolina right now just because Missouri was not competitive at all against Tennessee. I mean, they got blown out in that game. Again, the game was not even close. Tennessee, we'll talk about in just a second. They were really rolling offensively in this game. And then South Carolina, they beat Troy. I mean, it was an okay win for them. Nothing to get too excited about, as I really don't feel like South Carolina is going to win maybe one or two games in the SEC this year. But they are 3-2. They have a winning record right now. Texas A&M is also 3-2, and I've got them at number 11. I did not expect to see Texas A&M on this first graphic all year long. Now, I'm not one of those that was hyping this team up. I never said they would beat Alabama. Never really thought they had a chance. Never thought they had a chance to win the SEC West. But given their schedule, I thought this was still a 9-3, 10-2 type team because of their defense. Of course, Haynes King going down with the injury did not help anything. Zach Calzada has been terrible. But not just that, the offensive line has been a disappointment. They haven't been able to run the football as well as I expected them to. And you just see a team right now that is not a very good team at all. I mean, Texas A&M really, really struggling. You got to beat a team like Mississippi State. I mean, you've got to. And they just couldn't get it done. Defense didn't even play as good as I thought that they could have in that game either. So Texas A&M here at number 11. They are 3-2, but it has been a rough start for the Aggies. Let's go to the next 5 teams. I've got Tennessee at number 10 after again an impressive win over Missouri. That offense got rolling early, and they never looked back. You're starting to see what this Tennessee offense is going to be capable of with Josh Heupel, and why I think he's a pretty good hire. It's looking like a very good hire right now. This team does not have the talent or depth to compete with the top teams in the SEC. Not even close. They lost so many guys in the transfer portal and just players that graduated and everything last season. Just wait until they get the talent and get the depth. Tennessee might be on their way back because they're going to have an offense that can score a lot of points. They're going to be kind of in that same boat as Ole Miss, I think, moving forward. I think you could see them kind of following that blueprint. If their defense can play a little bit better, then watch out. Tennessee could be a contender in the East in the near future, but not this year. They still have a long ways to go. But this is a nice win and enough to get them up to number 10. Mississippi State at number 9. They're coming off a win. LSU's coming off a loss, but with just a couple of weeks ago, we saw Mississippi State lose to LSU head-to-head. I had a hard time putting Mississippi State ahead of LSU, so I've got LSU at 8, Mississippi State at number 9. The defense has been strong for Mississippi State all year. The Bulldogs, again, have had one of the better defenses in the SEC, but it's the offense that is starting to come along a little bit. I think we saw that in their comeback against LSU that came up just short. And against a very good Texas A&M defense, they put up some points. Not a ton of points. They had like 26 or something. But you're starting to see this offense get it together, playing a little bit better on that side of the ball with a very strong defense. And this air raid offense will get better, I think. And Mississippi State has a chance to be a pretty good team, a team you're not going to want to play, I think, in the second half of the year. LSU at number 8, tough loss to Auburn. This is a team that can't run the football. They couldn't get Bo Nix on the ground. It was a disappointing effort for the Tigers of LSU. I still think the talent's there. I still like Max Johnson at quarterback. The offensive line, I think that's going to be a big issue for them. If they can improve that area, this team still has a chance to be a pretty good team this year, but it was not good against Auburn. Florida at number 7, their second loss of the year, but they've lost to 2 really good teams. And, you know, Kentucky with the block kick and made some big plays. If Florida and Kentucky played 10 times on a neutral field, I think Florida wins at least half of those times, at least 5 of the 10, probably 6 or 7 times. But things just didn't go their way on Saturday night. They lose. Again, it's nice to have losses to good teams, undefeated teams. But Florida, they've got to get some things figured out. They've got to be able to come up with those crucial plays on offense when they need them. Yeah, they put up a lot of yards in this game, but not a lot of points. Again, that is a big area of concern for the Gators. Ole Miss at number 6, not a great performance against Alabama. Let's just be honest here. And I've said this a couple of times. What would have happened in this game if Ole Miss had just punted the ball? Maybe not on the first drive, but when they were in their own territory, there were a couple times they gave Alabama a really short field because they did not pick up first down conversions on 4th down. And I just feel like that just kind of gave all that momentum to Alabama, and they never had a chance in this game. I feel like if they played again and played it a little bit more conservatively from that aspect, Ole Miss still loses, but I think it's a little bit more respectable. Maybe they lose by a couple of touchdowns. But when you put yourself in a hole like that against a team like Alabama, you can just forget it. And again, I question those decisions. Ole Miss, though, still has a high-powered offense, and I still think they're going to be just fine. But look, nobody's beating Alabama or Georgia this year in the SEC, in my opinion, and Ole Miss really didn't come close at all. Number 5 is Arkansas. They come in at 4-1. The Razorbacks, tough loss to Georgia, but they do still have a win over Texas, a really impressive win over Texas, plus the win over Texas A&M, which doesn't look quite as good anymore. But I still like the Razorbacks. I've got them there at number 5. It's a toss-up between them and Ole Miss. You kind of have to go to the resume and just say, look, Arkansas's got to win over Texas. That's better than anything Ole Miss has, and that's why I've got Arkansas there at number 5. Auburn at number 4. They are 4-1, and their one loss came to a top 5 team in Penn State. Very impressed with their win over LSU. If you want to kind of nitpick here and look at the Georgia State game, you could say, well, yeah, Auburn probably not a top 4 team in the SEC. But you could kind of do the same thing with Kentucky. Remember, they barely beat Chattanooga. So I think you can forgive these teams for one bad performance. Overall, Auburn has been really solid this year. They have completely dominated against lesser competition besides the Georgia State game. And Kentucky's kind of, again, in that same boat. But they're also 5-0. They haven't lost a game. They haven't played a team like Penn State. But still, that was a really big win for them over Florida. I think you have to put Kentucky there at number 3 right now. Again, undefeated. A win over one of the better teams in the conference. If you want to look at the Chattanooga game, okay, you can maybe say, well, Kentucky doesn't deserve to be number 3. But, hey, at least they found a way to win that game. At least Auburn found a way to beat Georgia State. And you look at how these two teams played last weekend, I think they deserve to be 3-4. Alabama and Georgia at 1-2, kind of in a league of their own right now in the SEC. It's tough for me. Georgia maybe has a little bit better of a resume at this point, but I just like Alabama's offense more than Georgia's offense. I said this in my top 25 video. Georgia has the better defense, but the gap is not as wide, in my opinion, as the gap between Alabama's offense and Georgia's offense. Georgia does not have a bad offense, but they're not going to be a team that, against good competition, is going to go out and score 40 points. I just don't see that happening. With their offense. You know, you can circle back to the Arkansas game and say, look, they scored 37. Well, one of those was a defensive touchdown, and it was a game where their defense just played so well that they shortened the fields. They had some short fields in there early on, and it was just a game of momentum where they couldn't be stopped. It's an argument that you could make, I guess, but I think Alabama deserves to be number 1 right now. That could change for me. 1 week could change this. If I see Georgia look really good against Auburn and Alabama has maybe a close game against Texas A&M, probably going to flip those teams. But for now, it's the Crimson Tide at number 1 because of their offense, and their defense isn't bad. I mean, I'm talking about Georgia having a better defense, but like I said, the gap's not that big. Alabama also has a really good defense. It's like Georgia's an A+ and Alabama's an A, so it's not that big of a difference. So because of that, I'm going with the Crimson Tide at number 1. Those are my SEC power rankings heading into week 6. What do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? How would you rank the teams? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on our SEC football channel.